You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 55, the double nickel of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. With me is Matt Lowe.
Yo.
And how she has any hair left in her head, I'd have no idea. Jessica Salaji.
Hey.
Double nickel.
The double nickel, the speed limit. Matt, how's your week?
Busy, man. I mean, crazy busy. Both work and personal stuff, but it's good. I'm here. I'm alive.
And Jessica, define busy for us.
I don't even know how anymore. Like, it's just become what is. But there was a day, I think it was day 27, right before crossover, where I literally sat in my chair for like 18 hours. It was horrible. I cried a couple times.
Sounds healthy.
Yes.
Right. You know what? I say busy, but I did take a moment. I told my wife last night when we went to bed, I was like, I'm not setting an alarm and I'm just going to get up whenever. And like I sleep for 6.5 or 7 hours and I'm up on my own and that's it. And my little girl came and woke me up. And I picked up my phone to see what time it was, and it was 10:40. And I was like, holy crap, I got to get out of bed. But it was nice, I guess, sleeping late for a change.
It is a nice change. Especially since the government stole an hour from us.
Right.
And you know...
Without my consent.
Without my consent. Sleep assault. Pick a time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's 2/3 versus a third. We're only on standard time for 4 months.
I like when it's later or lighter later.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
yeah.
There's nothing more depressing than driving home from work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it's dark already.
Right.
Like, what time is it?
It's dark when you go to work, dark when you come home. It's like, Jesus Christ.
It's like a coin flip. I'm going to make dinner or hang myself.
That escalated extremely quickly. I don't like the dark. I'm going to kill myself.
Oh, no. I mean, I call it suicide weather when we have that January, February, haven't seen the sun in 2 weeks. And, you know, it's just... When it's light out, it's dreary. I'm like, yeah, there are people hanging themselves right now.
Could you imagine living in that part of Alaska where it's like dark for a month? Of course, they have the other side of that where it never gets dark.
I would like that.
So even at 3 a.m., you know, it's daylight.
Yeah, you come out of the bar at closing time, have to put sunglasses on.
Right.
Well, Jessica, you touched on it. Give us a definition. What is crossover day?
Crossover day, it used to be day 30 in the legislature, but now it's day 28. And it's the day at which, or the point at which bills that were in the House have to pass out of the House and be sent over to the Senate, and the Senate bills have to be pass out over to the House in order for them to be up for consideration, to be passed by day 40 and sent to Kemp's desk. There is a caveat to that because, like, you can make amendments to bills and change them. And, you know, if there's a bill that passes out of the House and goes to the Senate and the Senate takes all the language out and replaces it with something entirely differently, they can still send that back. But the actual bill and the bill number has to be passed out of the House and sent over to or sent out of one chamber to the other by that date in order to have a chance of becoming law.
So all the balls have to be on the court, but they can be bounced back and forth again.
Correct. And if the Senate, or, you know, if the House passes something and the Senate changes it, it has to go back to the House before it can be sent to Kemp's desk. But right now we're working with about 300 bills. The House passed 180 and the Senate passed, I think, 120 or so. So 300 new laws that actually passed out of the respective chambers.
And I can't remember what rep it was that gave a friend of ours advice. Said, don't ever promise to read every bill because there's no way you can.
Then vote no. If you don't get to read it, vote the effing no.
Hey, look, I've been pretty proud of my rep. He's voted no a few times, and that's good. That's good.
Better than mine. Mine has had her brick on the green button since she got sworn in for her 5th term.
He also had the testicular fortitude to vote no instead of going, Mr. Speaker, can I be excused? I have to go potty.
For which vote?
For any of them. I mean, these, and we'll get to some of them, but these reps and these senators that have the excused. I mean, it's grade school stuff. They don't want to be on the record one way or the other.
Right.
So let's go ahead and start off with the disclaimer that what you're about to hear are our opinions and not necessarily those of All on Georgia.
And they are vicious.
And Jessica's at this point, she has been sharpened by the friction of the first half of the legislative session. She's going to lop off some heads. Don't cross her.
That's right. I'm at the point where, like, everyone's claiming, oh, legislators are people too. Legislators are people too. And I'm like, you can either have it in the way that you think legislators are just like us and we don't stand for them, we don't applaud for them, we don't hold them in a high regard, or we hold them accountable to the highest degree and we bludgeon them when they screw us.
Well, look, first of all, the legislators are people too. Shut the hell up.
I agree.
You asked for it. I mean, you
asked
literally
for it. No, you campaigned for it. You
begged for
lots of time and lots of money getting it. And it was probably other people's money, but whatever.
Yeah, the legislators are people too. Yeah, that was one of the reasons I don't like them being called leaders. They're not leaders. They're supposed to be in our employ.
They're servants.
Allegedly. Mm-hmm. Allegedly.
So yes, so that let's set the tone because I think on crossover, they went until about 11:15 and like the entire time I was just like, what are you doing? Please stop. Please stop.
But I was impressed they stopped. That it was over at 11:15 because I had my iPad out. I was sitting up in bed. It was like, oh, this is going to be a long night. And 11:15 it was over. It's like, this is great.
It's because Ralston ran out of bills that were for people that are bowing down to him, so he had to call it quits.
What did I just say? What the hell did I just say about Jessica right now? She's...
All right, I'm still a little shocked about this whole 180 versus 120. Like, my God, that's a lot. I swear if I was in there, I'd be like, no. And they're like, why are you voting no? I'd be like, it's too damn many this time around. After about, 25.
I was at a luncheon reading the text from you two, sitting between the representatives from the congressman in our area. And I'm sitting there reading my text, like 30 bills were dropped today. This was on crossover day. 30 bills dropped today. I looked at that and I showed it to one of the aides for the congressman. He goes, oh, good Lord. Because there's no way your staff can read all those bills. There's no way. You have no idea what's in there. You're depending on the summary to tell you what it is. So anyway, before we waste more time on this, now, all of these bills we're discussing that passed have to be approved by the other house of the legislature. If it's House, it's got to be approved by the Senate. If the Senate's got to be approved by the House. All right, let's start off with I'm all for small government, but hate crimes legislation.
So, Gwinnett County State Representative Chuck Efstration, who is to blame for the stripper bill in the House. A lot of things to blame. He's just all around a terrible lawmaker. He dropped House Bill 426, and it's a hate crimes bill. Came up last year by Wendell Willard, but didn't pass, so this is the replacement for it. And basically what it does is it allows for harsher punishments if the intent is determined to be against or for hate against a special class like race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender, mental disability, or physical disability. And the language is loose, and it says it could be a real hatred or a perceived hatred. And unlike some of the other laws in the country, this one is a little bit different. It requires like a contingency when you're indicted. So if you commit a crime of assault, they tell you at the time that you're going to be charged and then sentenced pursuant to this code section. And so if you commit a hate crime versus somebody who commits assault not under hateful pretenses, I guess, you would be charged with the same code section under the law, but you would be sentenced entirely differently, and you would have stricter fines and longer prison sentences. So that's the bill.
That doesn't sound discriminatory at all.
Yeah, this one really bugged me because it had no opposition in the committee. When they got to the floor, David Stover tried to table it and it failed, and then it passed overwhelmingly in the sense of it had plenty of Republicans and Democrats. And then it was met with a thunderous applause and standing ovation after it passed. And I was just like, this is sick. This is sick.
Does it say, like, I know here it says it seeks to toughen punishments for crimes committed because of the actual or perceived race, color, religion, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Does it say what race or what color or what religion? I guess.
No, are you asking, can it be applied to?
I'm saying if some dude comes and kicks my ass, right? And I don't know, he's a white guy, and I'm a white guy. Does he get a hate crime stuff, or is that only if it crosses racial lines?
No, yes, because of the mentally disabled part.
Yeah, you.
And and back on the serious part of it is, and Matt, you're hitting on something that's true. Is we're creating classes of victims, and you're going to find, and someone's going to lose their minds when it is applied to a white victim, and the assailant is something other than purely Caucasian.
Right, like a black dude,
Hispanic, Haji, anything else.
Haji.
Sorry. Not sorry. That attacks somebody, some prosecutor is gonna apply this law to it. Man, we've been through this before with the tax stuff. I can't imagine any of the three of us are for creating special classes of citizen.
Never.
Nope. I mean, you know what? I would do that, but I would stick an age to it. You do something to someone younger. Like you make that little kid thing, but it's not a color or race, religion, whatever.
We already have laws for that, like cruelty to children.
Right. No, I understand. That's why, I'm okay with those.
And there's already elder abuse.
Right.
So we've already protected the most vulnerable, the people who can't defend themselves, with elder abuse and obviously child abuse, neglect, and everything else. Man, I don't. This is a solution looking for a problem.
Well, Chuck Efstration is an attorney, and I mean he's very smart. I will give him that. But I don't understand how somebody who has supported so many of the initiatives under Governor Deal and some of the legislative initiatives for justice reform would support taking away a judge's discretion on sentencing, because this imposes mandatory minimums, which is what we are trying to move away from, which is what the nation is trying to move away from at the federal level, and they're encouraging the states to do it. And this is the exact opposite of that. And it, as an attorney, I mean, I don't know what kind of attorney he is, but he's obviously not a defense attorney, because no one who is a defense attorney would advocate for having to not only defend yourself against the allegations, but also the intent. Like, if you're charged with, or if you're told you're going to be sentenced pursuant to hate crimes, you have to not only prove your innocence, you also have to, even if you're guilty, you have to prove that that wasn't your intent, so that you don't get a harsher punishment. You have a higher threshold to defend yourself. I don't think that's right.
Well, here's a in earnest question. How do you defend against "I didn't do it" and say "I did it, but it wasn't because he was this protected class"?
No one's going to believe that. And I feel like charging and telling a jury that you're going to sentence under, or that it has to do with hate crimes, already puts you at a disadvantage in the eyes of a jury, even though they're supposed to be objective. We all know they're not.
Right. I didn't do it, and if I did, it wouldn't be because he's black.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Man, that's...
I don't know. I mean, look, I guess if you're going to do that, and but it's got to be something like crazy cut and dry, right? Like you were wearing your Klan outfit while you beat the snot out of a black dude. Then I'm okay with a hate crime.
I'm never okay with a hate crime.
Even then, yeah. Sorry, I'm stepping all over you. We were saying the same thing together.
Yeah, if I am beaten up because I'm a woman, and Dave is beaten up outside of a bar because he was mouthing off to somebody, the results are the same. Somebody violated my self.
Yeah, but I deserved it.
I agree. What I was saying is, if we have to have it, let's make sure it's really freaking cut and dry. But
it's not. It's going to be used as a bargaining chip. You know, we talked about this before. In fact, the episode that I stepped in for Jessica when Giles was doing is the overcharging. Is we're going to go ahead and charge you with the hate crime. If you don't want that extra year added on, just go ahead and plead guilty. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the financial ability or the education to fight it, you just go ahead and plead guilty. It's a prosecutor's dream.
Of course. Sucks.
It's the wrongest.
It is the wrongest. It's one of the worst bills to pass out of the House this session, because you're not making victims equal under the law, and you're making offenders unequal under the law. I mean, it's just tilting the justice system on every checkpoint. I hate it. I don't care. I don't care if we're one of 5 states that doesn't have hate crime legislators. Let's be different. Let's be equal.
We're not supposed to suck as much as everybody else.
That's right. Let's not suck at something.
Let's be one of the few states that doesn't have income tax. Let's be one of the few states that doesn't have a special protected class of victim.
That's right.
I'm for small government, but...
Yeah, that was disgusting. He got up there and he was just going on, and I'm for the type of government that governs the least, but... And I'm like, there's never a but to that. I am for a government that governs the least, period. Full stop. Turn off the mic, turn off the lights, go home.
Whenever you say, I am, but, you're not.
That's right.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and find that big nest of bald-faced wasps and hit it with a stick. The Georgia Life Act, sponsored by Ed Setzler. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the abortion bill that sets the time limit at 6 weeks.
That's right.
The heartbeat, commonly known as the heartbeat bill.
That's right. And if it's passed by the Senate and signed by Governor Kemp, it will be one of the strictest in the nation. And it does a couple of things. Aside from moving, our current abortion laws say that you can have an abortion up to 20 weeks. This sets it at 6 weeks unless there is a police report filed for rape or incest. Then you can still have the time period up to 20 weeks. The bill requires the state to count unborn children still in the womb as part of the population numbers. It opens up abortion records by doctors and hospitals to law enforcement because it criminalizes the act of abortion by both the person who has the abortion and the person who provides the abortion. Prohibits an abortion strictly if a heartbeat is detected or detectable. And then it allows someone to recover damages for homicide of a child in the womb. So it's pretty strict compared to obviously what some other states are doing like Virginia and New York. And it's obviously in response to that.
So that allows for the right to recover for homicide of children in the womb. That's to me seems very specific and a father's rights thing.
I think the premise is that, you know, you consider a baby in the womb as part of the population, and then you classify them as a dependent minor, which this bill does, and then from then on you've established, quote, personhood, and so it just trickles down to exactly what you're talking about.
So, well, if it counts for will it count? Can I claim it on my taxes?
We haven't gotten that far, but I mean, it's classified as a dependent minor. I mean, that's literally the language, but it doesn't say for tax purposes or anything.
Matt, I don't know, because you're talking about federal versus state law. Interesting thought, though. Well,
I mean, you know, I get to claim 7 kids on my federal income tax and 8 on my state.
I believe
this
that
year,
you do, because I believe that in the midst of the debate on the House floor, I believe that came up and it upset Democrats because it goes beyond that for them, and I think somebody used the words tax exemption, so I think that you would be able to claim them.
Interesting.
And you know what? I'm not even mad at that at all, because there is a real cost to, you know, a real cost to a child in the womb. You know, with prenatal care and everything else. If you're going to give deductions for kids, you know, of course I'm a get rid of the income tax anyway. But if you're going to offer deductions for kids because they're expensive, kids in the womb are expensive too.
But that gets into a very complicated issue of viability because, you know, depending on when you have a baby, if you miscarry and things like that, it's not worth the same deduction as a baby carried to full term. I mean, that's a very...
It is. And it's an old story about a tax man who would come around and he would count the eggs of chickens, and he would tax you on all of the eggs as if they were chickens, even though they hadn't hatched. And there was a legal argument as if you literally can't count the chickens before they're hatched. You can't count them as livestock yet. They're potential livestock, but they're not. So to your argument, that is exactly right.
Well, and I want to talk about the bill a little bit more and the different perspectives of it, but I think it's worth. There's a couple things I want to say about what happened when they debated it. Obviously, the bill had 3 women as co-sponsors, and 2 of them spoke to the bill. Jody Lott is Kemp's floor leader, and she spoke on it and managed to incorporate a couple of Kemp's campaign slogans into her speech, which I don't really care what side of the issue you're on. I felt like that was kind of tasteless because you're drawing attention away from the actual issue and the policy at hand to like remind people that you're fulfilling a campaign promise. I wasn't a fan of that. And then Darlene Taylor, she's a South Georgia Republican. She got up there and read a poem from a fetus, which was very awkward. Barry Fleming is a long-serving, powerful Republican, and he talked about how hard it was for him to have to drive by a abortion clinic on his way to work. And so obviously that was an interesting perspective too. But then they opened the debate up for those who were against it. And Deborah Silcox, who is a Republican who represents Sandy Springs, got up there and she was sobbing. I mean, sobbing because she is pro-life and felt like she'd heard from thousands of women from across the state and in her district that had asked her to vote against the bill. And so she spoke against the bill because she said that she was sent there to represent her constituents, that her constituents wanted her to vote against it. And it was a very emotional speech. And then a number of Democrats followed behind her. And I just really was impressed with our Democrats, which I don't say lightly because I criticize them often. But given like everything that's been on the national stage and the tasteless comments we've seen from Democrats in New York and Virginia and then like Planned Parenthood groups, I was very pleased that the Georgia Democrats were very calm. They weren't angry. They were emotional, but they weren't out of line or grotesque or just preaching feminism. It was logic and reason, and this is my position, and this is why, and these are the women that I know. And so I felt like it was worth noting that because that's not really been the norm on this topic in other states.
I will say the argument by Deborah Silcox is probably the best I've ever heard.
Why? Why do you say that?
Because she's a representative. Right. My opinion on the bill differs from hers. I supported the bill. But her argument saying that this is not my belief, however, we tongue-in-cheek talk at the beginning of the show, and we talked about being in our employ. That is literally being the employees. I don't agree with my bosses, but my bosses have spoken.
Well,
and they said they wanted me to vote against this bill, and I respect the logic, if nothing else. Not necessarily, it applied to any bill. It's not her personal beliefs. It is what she was sent there to do, which is the will of the people.
Right. Matt, you're in favor of the bill, right?
I am, yes.
Is that the end of the conversation?
Well,
Matt's scared. Matt's scared of you because you're mean and angry.
No, no. I just know that this topic is, it's man, it can be a damn minefield, and you got to be real careful because you just got to be careful with it. So, yes, I do support the bill because I guess there's a handful of things about it that I don't necessarily like. I think probably it's going a bit far to call it a dependent minor at that point. But I'm down with the idea of a detectable heartbeat because at that, I believe it's a person at that point. We've talked privately amongst us that there's the whole idea of what constitutes life, and they never really address it. So, for my own personal views, I took the definitions, both legal and medically, of death and applied it in reverse, and that's where I came up with life, which was some form of brain waves, brain activity, and major organ function. And right there at the 6-week mark, there's brainstem activity and a heartbeat, which is major organ. So for me, that's life. Anything after that, I think you're dealing now with the rights of another human being. So,
well, and I think we all agree that the morning after pill is fine. None of us are, old school, Vatican. You can't take birth control. And I would assume, and I don't know, I assume all of us think it's wrong to abort 2 days before the delivery date.
Right.
So now we're negotiating at what point is it appropriate, is it appropriate to cut it off?
Well, I would argue that this bill doesn't allow for the negotiation at all because most women aren't going to know they're pregnant at this point. And I think there's a couple of unintended consequences that you're going to see here. One, I think you're going to see a spike in claims of rape and police reports filed. And two, I think that in the instances when a woman finds out by some chance that she's pregnant at 5 weeks, I think, our state already requires 48 hours notification. If you call and schedule an appointment for an abortion, you cannot go for 48 hours. So what you're going to find is someone finds out they're pregnant at 5 weeks and they're going to, instead of weighing their options and thinking about it, they're going to hurry and have an abortion out of fear that they won't be able to after another 5 days. And so I think those are going to be some unintended consequences. I am against the bill primarily because in Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court was clear in saying that the states cannot regulate abortion in the first trimester. And it's been challenged. It's been overturned. The state laws for heartbeat bills have been overturned. And I think that we're going to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars fighting this if it passes, which I really believe it will because this is all Kemp's doing. And Duncan has said that he supports it in the Senate. And I think that we're going to spend a crap ton of money on something that has no merit unless Roe v. Wade is overturned in its entirety.
Well, and I will say Roe v. Wade is 1973. Yes. Is that right? Roe v. Wade was passed in a time when the science of fetal development was in its infancy. At the time, you didn't know if you were having a boy or a girl. Doctors would say, "Oh, you're carrying low, must be a boy, or you're carrying high, must be a girl, or the heartbeat's really fast, must be a girl." And I was born at that time. My little brother thought it was a girl, and we still think that because of his heartbeat or something like that. Our imaging has gotten so good now that. And again, I don't know exactly how many weeks this is, but when you see some of these 3D images, that's not a collection of cells. That's a baby.
Yeah, those happen. Those 3D stuff, 4D sonograms, because we had those done with our last two. No, sorry. I've had them on every child that's biologically mine. Those are usually around the 20-week mark.
Right. So and again, that's the law now. But at 20 weeks, yeah, there's a face, there's a nose, there's eyes. You is discernibly a baby.
Yeah, man. I could show you the picture of Logan at 20 weeks, and you could look at him now and be like, "Holy crap, that's that kid." Like it looks like it.
But I mean, I agree with what you're saying, and I don't think that. I mean, technology obviously cannot be refuted, but Roe v. Wade did not legalize abortion, like in the sense that it made something legal. What it said was that in criminalizing it, you're violating a number of constitutional rights, like the 1st, the 4th, the 9th, and the 14th, because it's a privacy thing, especially when it's a medical decision that is conducted by a physician, and you criminalize that and open up healthcare decisions to law enforcement. I mean, that was a privacy related issue that the court said was not unlimited, but it wasn't this like women have a right to kill a baby. That wasn't the contention, and that wasn't the ruling.
Right, but we make medical procedures illegal every day. If we were to stay by that argument, then the state has no business in medical marijuana.
Well, they don't.
Or we would all agree with that, right? But we have medical practices that are against the law now. That will make you lose your medical license. I don't know, bleeding, exsanguination, whatever else.
Assisted suicide.
That should be a decision between the doctor and the patient, but that's illegal, and they have not applied Roe v. Wade to that.
That's because no one's challenged it.
It would be an interesting argument is to apply Roe v. Wade to assisted suicide. It really would be
you'd force them to define life. That's what would happen.
Right, and that would be a very, man, I don't know if I want lawyers deciding life. That's the problem.
The other problem with comparing that as if it's apples to apples is assisted suicide 99% of the time comes from a consenting adult, not a child in the womb.
Right. Yeah. Oh no, you're right. You're absolutely right. But I'm talking about the legal standards. It's the same thing. The same argument I've had with abortion is if I get behind the wheel and I kill a pregnant woman, I get 2 homicides racked up, not one homicide and practicing medicine without a license. I get racked up with 2 homicides, even though the baby, could still be aborted by law. So if it's homicide for me to do it, wouldn't it be homicide for a doctor to do it?
Well, I mean, arguably, the woman is consenting because it's about viability. Like,
right, but you can't consent for me to kill somebody else.
No, but somebody else doesn't live inside my body and doesn't depend on me to continue living. Like, I think there should be a distinction in homicide of a child in the womb at a point of viability that we cut it off for everything else. I don't think you should have it shouldn't be homicide at 7 weeks.
Right. Well, yeah, that's you being reasonable and applying a standard evenly across the board. I mean, whatever your opinion is, if you're willing to apply it evenly across the board, at least that shows, an honest and ethics and standard that is fair for everyone, that you don't necessarily see under the Gold Dome.
Well, one of the things that really frustrated me about the bill sponsor when he was presenting it was he stood up there and spent 20 minutes talking about all of the government programs we currently offer to support women who have children and all of the government programs we're going to expand. Well, I'm not saying that we should just kill off all the... I mean, that's not my perspective on this. My perspective comes for a number of reasons, including the constitutional basis that I talked about. But if you're a conservative, your answer should not be, we want to roll back abortion laws so that we can provide more government to support it. That doesn't make any sense at all. And that's where Democrats and Republicans seem to flip on this.
No doubt. And again, this goes back to I'm for small government, but yeah, no. The answer. I had this conversation on Friday with somebody. He's like, well, I'm not against helping people out, but yeah, you're talking about charities. Well, no, charity is charity, not government, not stealing from one person giving to another. No, you're absolutely right. That's they throw whatever arguments they think will stick to the wall, and they just throw it out there. I don't know. You're right.
Well, that happens to us a lot, from a libertarian mindset, is because we have an issue with some government program. They think that people take the position that we believe that help shouldn't exist, when really it's, like, I absolutely think that we should have programs that feed the hungry. I don't think it should be government programs. That, that's what the freaking churches are for. Community stuff, that there.
Yeah, your belief is not that people should suffer. Your belief is that people should not benefit from the state.
Right.
And the state should not be in the way of easing people's suffering, as is. We're not going to get into the story in Dallas where they're blocking a church from feeding the homeless because we just don't have time. Speaking of time, we could sit on this bill. I mean, look, we could do an hour on this bill easily and left things unsaid. We've got to move on to the recess bill.
We'll come back to abortion as it moves through the Senate, though, because I'm sure it will change. But yes, the recess bill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, it hasn't gone anywhere since 1973. The subject will be around. It's just we just can't cover everything at once. The recess bill. I like your note on this. Surprisingly controversial.
Yes, I posted about recess and people lost their minds. And I was like, wow, I had no idea people cared this much about recess. But the bill is a conundrum between local control and state mandates. And the bill this is the third year that it's been proposed. It requires 30 minutes of recess every day unless they have PE. Because in a lot of counties, especially mine down here, they only have 10 to 15 minutes a day. And another aspect of it is that there are teachers who punish kids in K through 5 when they have behavioral problems and say they can't go to recess. And the argument is the kids that have behavioral problems are the ones that need recess the most. And so it requires 30 minutes every day. And 11 Republicans voted against it, and they're all claiming local control. But my thing is the state sets the curriculum, so the locals are just charged with implementing it. But I don't know what you guys think.
Well, as an expert who has no kids in school, I can't. The state is the one who sets the standards, the testing, and everything else. If you want true local control, and I'm for this, you want true local control. Take all the money away from that the state's giving them, give it back to the taxpayers, and let them fund their own school systems privately, and they have total local control.
You're getting ahead to another issue we're supposed to talk about, so be careful.
Don't suck, Dave.
No, that's kind of my view of it. You hear our local school board all the time talk about local this, local that. Okay, fine. 56% of my state income tax goes to fund the school system. Give it back.
Well,
yeah. If you don't want the state telling you what aspects or some things, then give the money back.
Right, and the number one expenditure is austerity costs. The teacher retirement.
I mean, there's a number of angles here, and we have the discussion about when you have your local property taxes. I mean, this only applies to people who have kids in the school system, but you can see the dollar amount of what you're putting into your local school system, and you're getting a benefit out of that. It's different with the state. We're all paying for this. If the state is setting the requirements for students, I want them to give them 30 minutes a day to be a child. Our schools are so torn up with mandates of ridiculous educational standards and teaching to the test. I have no problem with them trying to figure out a way to make this work. 30 minutes of letting a kid breathe. We're adults. We all get up from our desks and take a break and go have lunch and all these things. They don't get to do that. They're kids. If you don't like it, then homeschool your child.
We see so much stuff about obesity rates and getting your kids to move. Man, let them decompress for 30 minutes.
Give them an hour.
Yeah, I'm absolutely for this bill. I mean, I don't think this is a local control issue. Absolutely for this bill. I think 30 minutes is like Matt, you just said, is on the light side.
Here's the thing, though. Here's what I find so stupid is that it has to be a bill. why is this even a discussion? What the hell is going on?
Well, totally.
That somebody felt the need that we have to make this a damn law now, because and I know it is. My own kids, they don't get recess now. They do to some extent, but they don't get that much every day. It's every 2 days or whatever it is. And I know with the rain here lately, it's been even less. But I don't, man. Just some of this, I just sit and wonder how the hell we got here. Like, what happened?
Well, you can do anything if it's raining. You can get up and run around the classroom. You can get up and do a scavenger hunt.
Right, go to the gym.
Go to the gym.
Man, dodgeball.
Do you know they're not playing dodgeball anymore? You could do anything to get the kids just moving and just get the wiggles out. They're 5 to 10 years old. Get the wiggles out. Let's let them go out and be kids.
I agree.
And Jessica, you hit the nail on the head with it. Sitting here doing proposals, you sitting there writing article after article. You have to just stand up and walk outside every once in a while. Take the dogs outside, just breathe. Like, okay, reset. I think we're all in agreement on this one, and the only reason I'm pushing moving on is time. We're getting into bills that did not pass. The CON, Certificate of Need.
This is a confusing one. But basically, Certificate of Need is like how they license hospitals and healthcare facilities in the state and keep them a certain distance apart from others to eliminate competition and make sure that hospitals thrive. And it's very complicated because, like, altering the system that we have is a manipulation of the free market and still restricts competition, whereas like full repeal of Certificate of Need basically opens up the market entirely. And that's not what the bill that was proposed did. It jimmied with it all a lot. But basically, the hospitals were against this because they argue that, if you allow if a hospital, like in my county, has an ER and a couple outpatient facilities, and you allow a private hospital to open up 15 miles away, the public hospital is only going to get indigent care and Medicaid, and they'll never be able to turn a profit or even break even because we all know that they're reimbursed for pennies on the dollar. And the private hospital, that maybe specializes in orthopedic surgeries or expensive surgery, spinal care, things like that, will thrive, and you'll divide the base instead of balancing it out, because a lot of public hospitals make their money on, well-paying customers, if you will, and that compensates for the indigent care. And the Certificate of Need requires that certain hospitals around the state provide a certain level of indigent care, and when you open up Certificate of Need, that goes away for some of them. I don't know. It's very complicated, but I think it's good that this bill passed or failed, because it wasn't reform. It was a manipulation of what we have while still protecting certain groups and still providing exemptions for certain groups. Excuse me.
Well, the argument, some of the arguments that I've heard, and some of the laws are somewhat crazy, like Cancer Treatment Centers of America. There's one in Noonan as you come up 85. They are prohibited from taking but so many people from Georgia. They have to take people from out of state. So if they've hit their number, whatever it is, 45%, they're supposed to take so many indigents. This is by the state mandating, this private organization that specializes in cancer. So if you decide that that's the sort of care that you want for your cancer, you have to go to Alabama to get it done, or depending on where you are in the state, you have to leave the state to go get it done, to go to them, because the local specialist has hit their maximum number of patients they're allowed to take from within the state.
Right.
So everybody wants to protect and look, the local hospital in Paulding County is the number one private employer. And they've been hammering this bill pretty hard, obviously out of self-interest. I can only think if I was diagnosed with cancer, I would spend my last dime finding the best for my treatment, regardless of where it is, not whether the hospital takes indigents or not.
I just feel strongly that, I am a supporter of the repeal of Certificate of Need. I think competition is great. But you cannot expect people to... no one's going to operate a hospital just for serving indigent care and Medicaid and Medicare patients. It's who wants to get pennies on the dollar for their care, if anything. No one would open that. So I think that as long as the system is operating the way that it is, you can't just repeal part of it and say, look what we did. We opened up the free market.
Right. And we've talked about it before from a libertarian standpoint, is burn it down.
Right.
You can't twist things. If you're going to burn it down, you get rid of Medicare and you stop mandating that hospitals take folks who can't pay. And you leave that to nonprofits. That's the only free market solution. As I know that sounds awful, but
aren't most hospitals registered as a nonprofit though?
It depends.
I know, like Wellstar
right.
is.
Well, and that's one of the arguments is that they're registered as a nonprofit, but then there are people in the legislature who thinks that should mean no profit. And they want to regulate it as such. But nonprofit has never meant no profit.
Right.
Oh, no. Go to any nonprofit. I say any of the big nonprofits and look at the suits.
Oh, right. Yeah, the guys running those things,
Yeah, they're not buying their suits off the rack.
Right.
So, yeah, it's still a money-making venture. So, and I will say that Wellstar has been hammering this legislation locally pretty hard, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the governmental affairs committees. To the point where they're sending out emails to chamber members. I thought it came off incredibly self-serving for them to do that, and tasteless. But I agree with you, Jessica. This is not a free market bill. It's a monkey wrench in the current way of doing business.
Right. I'm glad it failed, and it was supposed to come back up for another vote, but it didn't because I guess hate crimes and abortion were more important than healthcare. So.
Is an abortion a hate crime?
I guess we're probably about to find out.
Oh man! Holy crap! What if Dad makes little Susie have an abortion because he finds out the father of the baby?
All right, Matt, we're having a hard enough time getting through the outline as it is without hypothetical stories. All right. Another failure was the bill to restore private property rights. We talked about it briefly, about the architectural design on the outside of a building being... Fix me, Jessica. Fix me on this one.
It was all about aesthetic stuff, and it restored private property rights, and the state barred local governments from saying if there's anything that just has to do with appearance, you cannot regulate it. You can still do safety and all those other things, and it can be for commercial and all of that, but for single and two-family dwellings, local and county governments cannot adopt or enforce ordinances about building design. And this thing, they bludgeoned it. And all of these GMA and ACCG and mayors groups and all these people who love controlling what color someone's house is killed the bill. Never got out of rules. private property rights still remain in the hands of our local governments. So, congrats.
Yeah, over regulation from your neighbors is no better than over regulation from Washington or from Atlanta.
This is the bill that the Rules Chairman Jay Powell said in committee. Doesn't your neighbor have a right to what's going on your property? No, they don't. They sure don't.
Here locally for us, one of our school board members was a very outspoken critic of that bill, and I find the irony of it, of his thing is, the state doesn't need to mandate what the local school board does, but damn it, the mayor and the county can tell me what I can do with my house.
Yeah, those people in Atlanta can't tell you what to do with your property. I can.
I don't know, man. It's real hard for me not to be like, hey, yo, get back in your box. But
yeah, look, and this is the same guy that I know I upset when he put out the question about what schools should do in case of mental illness and bullying, and I said less.
Right.
Worry about, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Worry less about legislating the interpersonal relationship of children. All right, moving on. We have our lone Senate bill.
Lone Senate bill. Yes.
Private school vouchers.
This is a mess, too. This is exactly what you were talking about a few minutes ago with regard to... What were we talking about? Where you brought up vouchers, basically?
Taxes.
Obviously.
I mean, the state state giving money
Yes.
to local boards, and they expect control for that
Yes.
money.
So this bill just allows to what you said, that it allows the state portion, not the local portion, but the state portion to go with the child. You can go to private school. If you homeschool, it could be used for tutoring or textbooks or other things. But it does require a commitment for that full year for you to keep your kid out of the school system. So, of course, the teachers groups and the educators groups, and they all came out in full force and said that you'll starve the school systems. And, all they harped on was the fact that a similar bill from the House, which didn't move, calculated that about $500 million would be diverted over a 10-year period out of public schools to private or homeschooling initiatives. This bill failed 25 to 28. 6 Republicans voted no, which most of them except except for Lindsey Tippins were from rural Georgia, which I thought was interesting, which means they were I guess at the mercy of their local school board and their teachers. But
$500 million over 10
only
years.
that much if you think about it, considering the state budget with federal dollars is $53 billion.
Now, I did notice that they pushed out the timeline until it seemed like a big number. Because if you said, again, it's still a big number for anybody personally, but $50 million a year statewide, you're like,
Yeah, but when
not a huge number, but you push that out.
Education budget is over 50% of our state budget, which is $27 billion. So let's just call it $14 billion for education. Let's just be conservative in our estimates. And you're telling me that $50 million is going to go somewhere else out of $14 billion? If our school systems can't survive on 13 and a, I don't even know, I'm not good at math. I guess I should go back to our public school. So I'm a result of our public school systems. But I mean, if you can't survive on that much money when the students aren't even coming to your school, you don't have to educate them, and you still get the local dollars. I mean, for crying out loud. But they argue that it all has to do with transportation costs. And, of course, retirement.
And, of course, retirement. You know, this goes back to, because I think the number I saw was like $5,500 a year.
Right.
This goes back to the story that we had a couple weeks ago about Thales Academy. Because if you get that $5,500 that you paid on your taxes back, I mean, you're only, for the year, a couple thousand away from sending your kid to a really good private school with Thales Academy. And really goes to show how much money our local schools waste.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, though, part of that, man, see, the whole thing, though, it gets crazy, the stuff that, like, we talk about the school system's wasting this, but there's a lot of things that they're mandated that they have to do. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about some of the mental health challenges that I have with my kids. One in particular, we talked about it on an episode. But that is, using the school system is one of the avenues that was recently presented to us if we couldn't find a way to force our insurance company to pay for the treatments, using the school system and the mandates that they have that come along with all the federal money strings was another one. So yeah, there's waste, and I see it, but man, when you really, like, if you start to get really intimately familiar with exactly what all the school system is required to do and whatnot, like, it may not be that much waste. Like, it's easy to say, oh, it's $300 million a year. What the hell do they do with that? Well, this is what they have to do with it. And I'm not saying that there isn't waste. I'm just saying that
you support the waste.
The problem...
I'm just kidding.
I'm not even saying I support the waste. I'm saying that, like it's a huge problem. Like, there's tentacles of government bullshit from the feds all the way down into every aspect of this that I don't know how one bill could do anything. Right. Because it's like, look, you're talking about, this is a crazy level of insane when you're telling me that there's a possibility that I could make the case that the school system cannot adequately provide the kind of education that my child needs, and I can force them to pay for a $60,000 a month residential treatment facility that includes schooling because of the various federal mandates that come with that federal money.
And because our state constitution says the public education shall be free, and when you incorporate kids that it cannot serve, that leaves it on the public school system to fund that.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and it's... Look, that luncheon I was talking about earlier, the speaker was Brian Otod, who is the school superintendent for Paulding County, where Matt and I live. A couple things that really bothered me from what he said was, we want from cradle to graduation. And I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention because I was, texting with you guys. My head spun around.
Right? I'd have sat up and been like, what'd you say?
What? And then he says our graduation rates, our goal is 100%. It's like, no, some of them dumb sons of bitches need to fail. And how many meals they serve. So the schools are not schools anymore. They're not educational facilities. And, when I was talking about Thales is like we talked about before, is an educational facility. We're not going to feed you. We don't, we're not there for mental health. We're there to teach your kids, and that's it. There's no football team. There's nothing else going on. If you want to put your kids in football, you go to an intramural somewhere else. You don't do it here. And our schools have become a one-stop shop to drop your kids off and advocate all your other responsibilities to the state, because that's what to Uncle Sugar.
Right.
And that's the problem. And Matt, you're right. One bill is not going to fix this. Just like we were talking about healthcare, at some point you have to burn it down.
Right. Yeah. Just get rid of it. Rip the Band-Aid.
And once again, I have eliminated my candidacy for school board.
Good. They're the worst kind of government we have.
Yeah, vote for Dave. A vote for Dave is a vote against this. All right, we've beaten it down and we've kept it pretty close to an hour. Final thoughts. Let's go to Jessica first.
Contact your senators and tell them to kill everything. Not anybody, because I don't want to incite violence. Just everything. All the bills. Kill them all. All they had to do was pass the budget and go home, and now we're contemplating 300 new laws. If you don't think one of those laws is going to impact your life and that it doesn't warrant an email to your senator, you're tripping and you're listening to the wrong show.
My senator isn't taking phone calls from me anymore.
You straight tripping, yo. Mr. Public Lands.
I got nothing. I said it all in the show.
Oh, thank you, Senator Lowe. As one of the bills that did not pass, our state senator, Matt and my state senator, signed on to a gun control bill that would, and we talked about it in the show before, but the fact that it was my state senator really upsets me. It would take away due process to remove Second Amendment rights from individuals that are subjects of TPOs, which you could get for any reason. So, Senator Heath, I hope you enjoyed your time in Atlanta.
Your time is up.
Right.
Goodbye.
Yeah, you're heading home. So, on that cheerful note, for Jessica Szilagyi, Matt Lowe, I'm Dave Roberts. We'll see you next week.
Later.